Police arrived at what seemed like a routine call about an abandoned truck at an airport parking lot. Nothing unusual at first, just another vehicle left behind by someone who probably missed their flight or had car trouble. But as officers approached the red Ford Ranger, something immediately felt wrong. That smell. That unmistakable, nauseating smell that every experienced officer dreads. One officer leaned closer to the truck bed, and that's when his stomach dropped. Inside were sealed storage containers, and the smell of decay was overwhelming. When they opened those containers, they discovered something that would launch one of the most disturbing serial killer investigations New Mexico had ever seen. 4 dismembered bodies, brutally murdered and stuffed into boxes like garbage. But here's what makes this case even more terrifying. The killer had been living among the community for weeks, raising his 3 young children, talking to police, and playing the role of a concerned father while bodies decomposed just blocks away from the police station. And those 4 victims? They were just the beginning.
An active, twisted serial killer was on the loose. What officers didn't know at the time is...
Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because we cover the most shocking cases that most channels won't touch. And trust me, this one gets darker than you can imagine. It all started on a quiet Sunday afternoon in Grants, New Mexico, when police received a call from a landlord who had just discovered something disturbing while cleaning out a rental property. The tenants had been evicted after months of not paying rent, and when the landlord went to clear out their belongings, he found something that made his blood run cold. Hidden beneath children's toys and household items was a small box, and inside that box was a dead puppy. But this wasn't just a pet that had died naturally. This puppy had been deliberately tortured. There was a cord tied tightly around its neck, and the way it had been killed suggested something deeply sadistic. The officer who responded to the scene was visibly shaken. He kept saying how this level of cruelty toward an innocent animal was just not normal, not something you see from regular people having a bad day. Animal control confirmed what the officer suspected. This was intentional torture. Someone had taken pleasure in causing this animal pain. The evicted tenants were identified as Sean and Jennifer Lannon, a couple with 3 young children who had recently been kicked out for not paying rent. At the time, police had no idea that this dead puppy was just a warning sign, a glimpse into the mind of someone capable of unimaginable violence. While one officer was processing that disturbing animal cruelty case, Detective Robert Turney was assigned to investigate a missing person report that had just come in. 19-year-old Matthew Miller hadn't been seen or heard from in nearly a week, and his grandmother was frantic with worry. Now, Matthew wasn't exactly unknown to police. He had struggled with substance abuse, so initially, detectives figured this was probably drug-related. Maybe he overdosed somewhere. Maybe he was sleeping it off at a friend's house. Maybe he just didn't want to be found. But Matthew's family insisted something was different this time. His grandmother had that gut feeling that something terrible had happened. And Detective Turney, being the experienced investigator he was, trusted that instinct. When Turney sat down with Matthew's family, he learned some crucial information. Matthew's girlfriend had seen him getting into a vehicle with several other people, including a blonde woman named Jennifer Lannon. That name should sound familiar, because Jennifer Lannon was the same woman who had just been evicted from that house where the tortured puppy was found. Matthew also frequently hung out with a close friend named Justin Ma and his girlfriend Leonie Cazada. The 3 of them were known to use drugs together, so police figured if anyone knew where Matthew was, it would be Justin and Leonie. Acting on this lead, detectives began searching areas where Matthew was known to hang out, and within a few hours, they found his truck. Matthew's Chevy Colorado was parked on a street just a few blocks away from where Justin and Leonie lived. The truck was dirty, locked up, and looked like it had been sitting there for days. When detectives finally got inside, they found Matthew's personal belongings, his clothes, and several items that immediately raised red flags. There were rubber gloves in the truck, a shovel in the bed, and multiple cell phones that appeared to have been deliberately damaged and destroyed. This was not the scene of someone who had voluntarily parked their truck and walked away. Something was very wrong. Detectives pulled surveillance footage from nearby cameras, and what they saw made their hearts sink. The video showed Matthew's truck arriving at Justin and Leonie's address on January 26th, just 3 days before Matthew was reported missing. But here's the thing that made detectives' stomachs turn. They never saw Matthew leave. The truck arrived, but Matthew himself was never seen walking away from that location. Detective Turney knew he needed to talk to Justin and Leonie immediately, so he rushed over to their residence, expecting to find answers. But when Leonie answered the door, she dropped a bombshell that completely changed the direction of this investigation. Justin was also missing, and before you think maybe they ran off together, wait until you hear what Leonie told police next. Leonie claimed she hadn't seen her boyfriend Justin since January 17th, nearly 2 weeks before Matthew even went missing. She also insisted she hadn't seen Matthew in almost a year, claiming the last time he visited was when she first moved into the house. But Detective Turney knew that was a lie, because he had surveillance footage showing Matthew's truck parked right outside her house just days earlier. Something wasn't adding up, and Leonie's story was falling apart before his eyes. Turney asked if he could search the house for any signs of Matthew or any evidence of foul play, and Leonie agreed. As officers walked through the home, they were looking for blood, signs of a struggle. Anything that might indicate violence had occurred there. But they found nothing. No blood, no weapons, nothing suspicious at all. However, just as Detective Turney was about to leave, Leonie mentioned something crucial. She said Justin had recently taken off with another woman, someone named Jennifer, and they were supposedly heading to Arizona to buy drugs and make some money. And there it was, the connection that tied everything together. Jennifer Lannon, the woman from the evicted house where the tortured puppy was found, was now linked to both missing men. Detective Turney immediately looked into Jennifer's background and discovered that she had also been reported missing by her ex-husband, Sean Lannon. The same Sean Lannon from the puppy torture case. 3 people, all connected through drugs and personal relationships, had vanished within days of each other, and they were all linked back to Sean and Jennifer Lannon. This was no longer just a missing persons case. This was starting to look like something far more sinister. Turney knew he needed more information, so he decided to canvass the neighborhood around Sean and Jennifer's old house, hoping someone had seen something suspicious. That's when he hit the jackpot. A neighbor had a security camera pointed directly at the Lannon residence, and what detectives saw on that footage would blow this case wide open. The video showed Matthew Miller entering Sean and Jennifer's house on January 26th. But here's what made investigators' blood run cold. Matthew was never seen leaving. Hours after Matthew entered the house, the camera captured Sean Lannon driving away in Matthew's truck. And when Sean returned, he was on foot and alone. Matthew was nowhere to be seen. 2 days later, on January 28th, the same camera recorded someone loading household items into a red Dodge Dakota parked outside the residence and driving away. For the first time, Detective Turney had visual proof that Matthew had been at the Lannon residence and that something had clearly happened to him there. The next step was obvious. Turney needed to sit down with Sean Lannon and get some answers. The following morning, Sean agreed to come in for an interview, and what he said during that conversation would determine whether this case moved forward or hit another dead end. When Sean sat down with Detective Turney, He seemed calm, maybe too calm for someone whose ex-wife and the mother of his 3 children had just vanished. Turney asked Sean directly if he had anything to do with the disappearances of Matthew and Jennifer, and Sean denied everything. He admitted he had driven Matthew's truck, but claimed Matthew and Justin had asked him to move it because they were going on a drug run and didn't want the truck sitting in front of the house. He painted a picture of himself as just an innocent bystander caught up in the chaos of other people's bad decisions. But Detective Turney wasn't buying it. Sean's story didn't match the surveillance footage, and his behavior was just off. However, without solid proof, Turney couldn't arrest him. So Sean walked out of that interview, free to go about his day, while detectives scrambled to find more evidence. The next day, police received a call that would change everything. A man named Josh Hall contacted investigators claiming he had witnessed something deeply disturbing involving Sean Lannon. Josh said Sean had recently shown up at a woman named Kelly Dotta's house carrying a bag, which he carefully hid in the ceiling before leaving to talk to police. After Sean left, Kelly discovered the bag, found a gun inside, and handed it off to a man named Danny Lamos, who locals knew as Dog. When Sean returned and realized the bag was missing, he completely lost it, smashing his phone on the ground before storming out. Josh was convinced Sean had killed all 3 missing people and was now trying to cover his tracks. This was the break Detective Turney needed. He immediately went to Kelly's house to verify Josh's story and see if she was hiding anything else. But when detectives first tried to get Kelly to come to the station, she agreed, but then never showed up. That was a major red flag. When Turney went back to her house 2 hours later, Kelly's whole demeanor had changed. She was nervous, mentioned she had talked to a lawyer, and was clearly hiding something. After some pressure, Kelly admitted she had several suspicious bags in her shed that belonged to Sean. Detectives searched the shed, hoping to find blood evidence or something that could directly link Sean to the missing people. But they came up empty. It was another frustrating dead end. At this point, Detective Turney was running out of options. 3 people were missing. All the evidence pointed toward Sean Lannon, but he didn't have enough to make an arrest. So Turney secured a search warrant for Sean and Jennifer's old house, hoping maybe, just maybe, he would find something the previous searches had missed. But when officers entered the property, their hearts sank. The house had been completely gutted. Carpets removed, drywall stripped, every surface scrubbed clean. Any potential evidence had been erased. Sean had been 1 step ahead the entire time. Detective Turney called Sean again, trying to get him to come back in for questioning. Sean sounded cooperative on the phone and promised he would come to the station the next day. But when tomorrow came, Sean was a no-show. Turney even offered to pick him up personally, but Sean never appeared. He was stalling, and Turney knew it. Time was running out, and if Turney didn't act fast, Sean might disappear completely. That's when Turney caught a break. During a background check, he discovered Sean had an outstanding warrant for missing a court appearance related to a 2020 assault and battery charge. It wasn't much, but it was enough. On February 25th, officers located Sean in Albuquerque and arrested him without incident. He was brought directly to the Grants Police Department for questioning, and this time, Detective Turney wasn't going to let him leave without getting answers. During the interview, Sean stuck to his story. He claimed he only moved Matthew's truck because Matthew and Justin asked him to. He said Jennifer, Justin, and Matthew had all taken off together on some drug deal, and he had no idea where they went. He seemed to have an explanation for everything. But Turney had a strategy. He deliberately brought up Danny Lamos, the man who had allegedly taken the gun from Kelly's house. Turney offered Sean an easy scapegoat, a chance to blame someone else for whatever had happened. And Sean took the bait. He immediately started talking about how scary Danny was, how Danny had once talked about disposing of bodies by feeding them to pigs, how Danny was the kind of person who could do something like this. Sean was trying to redirect suspicion away from himself, but Turney saw right through it. Without concrete evidence, though, detectives had no choice but to end the interview. Sean's outstanding warrant meant he would spend the next 7 days in jail, but after that, he would be released. The clock was ticking, and Detective Turney knew he was running out of time to find solid proof before Sean walked free again. For the next week, investigators worked around the clock, re-interviewing witnesses, reviewing evidence, and trying to locate that mysterious red truck that had been seen outside Sean's house. They knew that truck might hold the key to this entire case. On March 3rd, Sean completed his short jail sentence and was released back onto the streets. Detective Turney felt the pressure mounting. He had 2 prime suspects, Sean Lannon and Danny Lemos, but no bodies, no murder weapon, and no definitive proof that anyone had even been killed. And then, on March 5th, everything changed. Security at Albuquerque's Sunport Airport called police about an abandoned red Ford Ranger that had been sitting in the parking lot for days. Officers responded to the call, and as they approached the vehicle, they immediately smelled something foul. It was the smell of death. In the back of the truck were several sealed storage bins, and when officers opened them, they found the dismembered bodies of Jennifer Lannon, Matthew Miller, and Justin Ma. Jennifer had been shot in the head at close range. Justin had also been shot in the head and showed signs of severe blunt force trauma. Matthew's body was covered in evidence of massive head trauma, clearly beaten to death. But the horror didn't stop there. Hidden beneath a tarp in the passenger seat was a 4th body, Randall Apostune, the owner of the truck. His body showed signs of severe blunt force trauma, and a bloodied hammer found nearby was clearly the murder weapon. Inside the truck, detectives also found multiple serrated knives stained with dried blood, a handsaw, and several pairs of industrial gloves. This was no crime of passion. This was calculated, cold-blooded murder. Investigators immediately pulled surveillance footage from the airport, and what they saw confirmed their worst fears. On March 3rd, just 2 days before the bodies were discovered, cameras captured Sean Lannon driving the truck into the airport parking lot, exiting the vehicle, and walking away, leaving behind the bodies of 4 people he had brutally murdered. Detective Turney finally had his killer. Now he just had to find him. But Sean Lannon was already gone. He had left Albuquerque and vanished into thin air. The U.S. Marshals issued a nationwide alert, warning that Sean was considered armed and extremely dangerous and was possibly on a violent crime spree. Law enforcement agencies across multiple states joined the manhunt, desperately trying to track him down before he killed again. And then, on March 9th, Detective Turney received a call that made his blood run cold. Sean Lannon was now wanted in connection with another murder, this one committed just a day earlier in New Jersey. Authorities had linked Sean to the murder of Michael Dukowski through witness statements and surveillance footage. A quick background check revealed that Dukowski wasn't a random target. He was someone Sean had known for many years, a mentor from the Big Brothers Big Sisters program who had been in Sean's life since childhood. This revelation sent chills down investigators' spines. Sean wasn't just killing people connected to his ex-wife's drug activities. He was systematically hunting down people from his past, settling old scores, and leaving a trail of bodies in his wake. Now, with 5 confirmed murders and a serial killer on the loose, police knew they had to act fast. Federal authorities tracked Sean's movements using surveillance footage and cell phone data, and on the morning of March 10th, U.S. Marshals finally pinpointed his location in St. Louis, Missouri. They moved in quickly and captured him without incident. Sean Lannon's killing spree was finally over. He was immediately extradited back to New Jersey to face charges for the murder of Michael Dukowski. But Detective Turney still had so many unanswered questions. Why did Sean kill these people? Did he act alone? Were there more victims? Turney needed to sit down with Sean face to face and get the full story. When Detective Turney finally interviewed Sean after his capture, he expected more lies, more deflection, more attempts to shift blame. But what he got instead was something far more disturbing. Sean was done running. He was tired. He knew it was over. And so, with nothing left to hide, Sean gave detectives a full confession, a chilling, detailed account of each murder and the twisted reasoning behind them. Sean started with Jennifer. He claimed she had wanted to die, that she was high, and asked him to end her suffering. He said he went into another room, psyched himself up by repeating over and over that she had killed their children with drugs, and then he put a gun to the back of her head and pulled the trigger. He said he then tried to turn the gun on himself, but couldn't go through with it. After killing Jennifer, Sean said he closed the bedroom door, got his kids ready for the day like nothing had happened, and set them up in another room to keep them distracted. He then began the gruesome process of trying to dismember Jennifer's body to fit her into storage containers. He described how awful and traumatic it was, how the images still haunted him. But he knew he was living on borrowed time and needed to get his kids somewhere safe and figure out how to get rid of the evidence. About a week later, Justin Ma showed up at the house. Sean had been baiting him by pretending to be Jennifer through text messages. When Justin arrived expecting to see Jennifer, Sean shot him in the back of the head while he was looking down into a floor vent searching for drugs that Sean had promised were hidden there. Sean described how much blood there was, how he had to rip up the flooring in the laundry room to get rid of the evidence. He said it took him 2 hours before he could even bring himself to move Justin's body. Then came Matthew Miller. Sean revealed that before killing Justin, he had discovered photos on a phone showing a man sitting naked in his living room with Sean's young son on his shoulders. When Sean confronted the man in the photo, he claimed it was Matthew who had taken the picture. Whether this was true or just another justification Sean created in his twisted mind, we may never know. But it gave Sean the motivation he needed to kill Matthew. Sean said Matthew came over to the house with his girlfriend Felicity at one point, looking for money. Sean gave them some cash and asked Matthew to come back later to give him a ride to get water. When Matthew returned alone, Sean shot him in the back of the head. Sean then loaded Matthew's body into storage containers and tried to figure out what to do with all 3 bodies now piling up in his house. That's where Randall Apostun came into the picture. Sean needed someone with a truck to help him move the bodies, and Randall agreed to transport the containers for $150. But when they got to Randall's place, Randall demanded an additional $300 to store the boxes there. Sean didn't have the money, so Randall said he was going to drive Sean back and take the boxes with him. They got into a fight in the front seat of the truck, and Sean beat Randall to death with a hammer right there in the driver's seat. Now Sean had 4 bodies and no plan. He drove the truck around for a bit, not knowing what to do, and eventually decided to leave it at the airport. He took an Uber from the airport back to his car, and the next day, he flew out of state with his children, knowing it was only a matter of time before the bodies were discovered. But Sean wasn't done killing. His final victim was Michael Dukowski, the man from the Big Brothers Big Sisters program who Sean claimed had sexually abused him as a child. Sean said Dukowski had photographs of that abuse, and when Dukowski refused to hand them over, Sean beat him to death. Throughout this entire confession, Sean remained eerily calm, showing almost no emotion as he described dismembering bodies, shooting people in the back of the head, and beating a man to death with a hammer. It was like he was describing a grocery list, not the brutal murders of 5 human beings. But just when Detective Turney thought he had heard everything, Sean dropped one final bombshell. He claimed there were 11 more bodies. Sean told detectives he had been killing people for 2.5 to 3 years, mostly drug dealers connected to Jennifer. He said he had buried their bodies in remote areas of Malpais National Park. He described how some were shot, others were stabbed, and some were killed with weapons like a pickaxe. Detectives were stunned. If Sean was telling the truth, he wasn't just a killer. He was a prolific serial killer who had been operating undetected for years. Law enforcement immediately launched extensive searches of the areas Sean described. But despite their best efforts, no additional bodies were ever found. To this day, it remains unclear whether Sean was telling the truth about those 11 victims or if it was just another manipulation, a final attempt to control the narrative and make himself seem even more dangerous and notorious than he already was. Detectives also followed up on Danny Lamos, the man Sean had tried to implicate during his earlier interviews. Danny was located in Albuquerque and arrested by U.S. Marshals on March 25th. He agreed to speak with Detective Turney and firmly denied any involvement in the murders. He admitted taking the gun Sean had hidden at Kelly's house, but said he had no idea it was connected to a murder and had sold it shortly after. After exhaustive interviews and reviewing all available evidence, detectives cleared Danny and all other potential suspects, concluding that Sean had acted entirely alone. In October 2022, Sean Lannon pleaded guilty to the first-degree murder of Michael Dukowski in New Jersey and was sentenced to 35 years in prison. Then, in May 2024, he pleaded guilty to the murders of Jennifer Lannon, Justin Ma, Matthew Miller, and Randall Apostoon, receiving 4 consecutive 15-year sentences for a total of 60 additional years. As part of his plea agreement, Sean will serve his New Jersey sentence first, then be transferred back to New Mexico to serve his additional 60 years behind bars. In total, Sean Lannon will spend 95 years in prison, effectively ensuring he will never walk free again. This case is a chilling reminder of how someone can hide in plain sight, living among us, raising children, and interacting with the community while secretly being capable of unimaginable violence. Sean Lannon sat across from Detective Turney just hours after dismembering bodies and coldly denied any involvement while a truck full of corpses sat parked just blocks away. He played the role of concerned father and worried ex-husband while actively hunting down his next victim. The most terrifying part of this case isn't just the brutality of the murders, it's how calculated and methodical Sean was. He renovated his house to erase evidence. He manipulated witnesses and tried to frame others. He continued living his normal life, dropping his kids off at school and running errands while bodies decomposed in his home. If it wasn't for that neighbor's security camera and the eventual discovery of the truck at the airport, Sean might have gotten away with it. He might have continued killing, burying bodies in remote locations, and living his double life indefinitely. So what do you think about this case? Do you believe Sean really killed 11 other people? Or was that just another lie to make himself seem more notorious? And what about those photos he claimed to have found? Were they real? Or were they just another justification he created to rationalize his violence? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because I want to know what you think about this absolutely insane story. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. This case really shows how important it is to trust your gut when something feels wrong. Matthew's grandmother knew something was off. Detective Turney trusted the evidence even when it seemed like they were hitting dead ends. And that persistence ultimately brought a serial killer to justice. If you want to see more cases like this, cases that will absolutely blow your mind and keep you on the edge of your seat, Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. And if you enjoyed this video, smash that like button because it really helps the channel grow and allows me to keep bringing you these deep dives into the darkest corners of true crime. Check out the video I have linked on screen right now about another serial killer case that will leave you absolutely speechless. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe out there.